Welcome back to AudioLife, the podcast where we tell your story in your voice. We have a special show for you this week in honor of Halloween. We're revisiting some of our most listened to stories, and these are some spooky encounters. Derek Martin shares his adventures with UFOs, ETs, werewolves, and Bigfoot. We hope you enjoy, and we're wishing you a safe and happy Halloween from AudioLife.
I've always been interested in all kinds of paranormal and supernatural, weird, strange stuff. As far back as I can remember, some kind of mind control going on that may have been, maybe that could have been induced like just directly to the brain, or maybe the white light had some effect that caused something like that. But for the wording to be so specific between me and my parents, that's quite strange. Recently, I've heard that the military does have some technology where they can, and this sounds totally sci-fi and crazy, but they can make a voice in your head sound like your own voice and say whatever they want. They can make it sound like any voice, but so there could be a situation where you think you're talking to yourself, but it's actually someone else speaking to you inside your head with your own voice. I'm not saying it was the military doing it, because who am I? I was nobody, just living in the country as a kid. But I'm saying if the military has that, then someone with more advanced technology, presumably, that's not a big deal for them. I think about the fact that I was and am nobody in this field a lot. It's like, why would this stuff happen to me? There's no, other than the fact that I'm open to it, there's not a real reason for that. It's funny, sometimes weird things happen and like people don't talk about them at all. Or not because they don't necessarily want to, but for some reason it never occurs to them. Like I've heard about people encountering something spooky or scary and like they're so scared in the moment that they don't talk about it on the way home and they just end up never talking about it, right? And it's like, that's a very strange thing. Do they not want to think each other are crazy? Like, they were there at the same time. They had the same experience. Like, why wouldn't you want to talk about it unless there is some sort of weird subconscious suggestion like, this isn't something you want to really talk about? It's very mysterious. So no, I haven't asked my parents if they know about the meaning. My kids, I have a daughter, or two daughters. Claire is 7 and Abby is 5. And they have a lot of trouble going to sleep and sleeping because there's monsters, right? And my wife gets super upset with me because she's not into any of this. And she's like, girls, there are no monsters. And I'm like, well, kind of, but there kind of are, though. You're right? So it's a real kind of difficult situation when daddy believes in monsters and you're trying to get your kids to go to sleep. I'm just like, look, yeah, I've seen ghosts. I've seen, I think I've seen aliens. I've been near other things that are scary, I think. And none of them have hurt me. Like, that's the thing. Like, yeah, it's scary, but guess what? I'm fine. I'm totally fine. I used to wake up in the middle of the night with my ears bleeding or my nose bleeding or...
Really?
Yeah, all the time as a kid. Like, or even now I'll wake up with like a huge scratch on the back of my shoulder. Could be nothing. Could be I just scratched myself moving, but it's very strange that it always happens. But a lot of stuff has freaked me out, and none of it has actually hurt me. And so it's like the only thing to fear is fear itself is true in my mind, at least until I get hurt. But one day my dad was driving home from the cottage. He up on the road ahead, there's a little town you have to drive through to get back to where my house was. So he was approaching that town and he saw a huge object above the road. So he kept driving forward because he's got to go down that road until he was like under this thing. So he pulled over and rolled down his window because it was like a crank window. And just looked out his window like, what the heck? And it was a huge black triangle about the size of a football field. Completely silent, about 400 feet above his truck. And there was a light on each corner of the triangle. And my dad is not into UFOs or anything. He was a Bell telephone technician. Like, he literally worked on analog stuff and it was very handy. Is very handy. Yeah. So there's in the middle of the triangle, there's a red glowing light, like an orb. And it detached from the triangle and started spiraling down towards his truck. And that's when he pretty much noped out and just said no. Floored it and came home. But he came running in the house and was like, get the binoculars, get the telescope, like, get out here, get out in the yard. So we got this stuff and we went out in the yard. And we could see it, like, over the nearby town, because it was big enough to see. About a minute or two later, 2 fighter jets came in to try and intercept this thing. And it just took off, like, in the blink of an eye, it was gone over the horizon. And the 2 fighter jets just kind of circled the area once and then went back the way they came. They were like, well, we're not touching that. So that was crazy.
As you know, I'm a big fan of the supernatural. I was riveted by your encounters that you mentioned in the last one. And in our debrief, you actually blew my mind again before departing. And this was in relation to werewolves, or I think as you referred to it, as dogmen. Could you perhaps share some insight or experience or what you're aware of with regards to that? Because I'm sure our listeners will be absolutely stunned to hear and take part in this.
Yeah, so I'll start out with just a short anecdote from when I lived on the farm that I told you about last time, where I had light come in the window and stuff. I think I was about, 10 years old or so, maybe a little bit younger, but I was laying on my top bunk and like the window to the back of the farm was kind of beside my feet. Outside, like our barn was back there and it had a big floodlight on it that shone on the ground. I couldn't see the roof of the barn because that huge tree was in the way, but at the base of the barn, I could see the circle of light. And one time when I looked out there was like 4 or 5 wolves walking in a circle, like pretty much right on the edge of that circle of light. They were just kind of walking in a circle. This is just on the verge of my memory, but I was like, I don't think we have wolves around here. And I asked people and they said, no, there haven't been wolves around here in like 100 years. So maybe there were coyotes or who knows, but still very weird. Like, why would they be doing that? And why would they stick to the light circle and stuff? And a little while after that, the way my window in that bedroom worked was, if I climbed out that window, it would be about 18 or 20 inches down to the roof of our kitchen. And then that kitchen roof was on a slant, and then it would drop down about 10 feet to our deck. So there was a roof there, but you'd have to get up 10 feet to get on that roof. The only way to do that would be either jumping and climbing or like climb up our TV antenna tower, which is just bits of metal, So another night I was laying in my bed and there was literally a wolf right at my window looking at me, like showing its teeth and growling. It was scary AF. And I was just like, no. So I like jumped out of bed and grabbed the blind and pulled the blind down. And shortly after that, I was like, hey, sis, we're trading bedrooms. Like, she was too little to know or care. But I was like, I can't face that window anymore. Like, in her bedroom, she faced away from the window. And so I just said, Mom, Dad, I want my sister's bedroom. Like, I'm done with this bedroom. I didn't tell them why. Yeah, that scared the crap out of me forever. And it's still like a very vivid memory. I did think about it, but I was like, how the heck could a wolf get up on the roof? This doesn't make any sense. And I heard stories about, there are these things called screen memories where sometimes people who are abducted say that, they'll have a false memory implanted over what really happened. Like, they will think they saw, a 4-foot tall owl when, in actual fact, the tallest owl in the world is about 25 inches tall. So a 4-foot tall owl doesn't make any sense. But a short alien could change your perception in a way to make you think they were an owl. And owls have big black eyes, just like the supposed aliens do, right? So I was like, maybe it was like an alien making me think it's a wolf or something. Like, does that make any sense? Because we've seen UFOs and things. But I just, there was nothing I could do to come up with anything else about that. But later on, say around 2017, which is, way later than when that happened, I started getting into Bigfoot, which we'll talk about later. But once you start looking into one kind of creature, you start hearing about other kinds of creatures. And somebody said, oh, you should check out this podcast called Dogman Encounters Radio. And I was like, okay, I'll look it up. So I added it to my podcast thing, but their cover art is like a werewolf, like a big honking werewolf. And I was like, oh, this will be interesting. And I think they have about 500 episodes now, and they do sometimes multiple people per episode. But they just interview people who say they've seen a werewolf, basically. But the distinction between a werewolf and a dogman is dogmen don't ever turn into humans. Like they're not a human turning into a werewolf and then back to a human. It's just always the big honking scary werewolf part. Some of them are smaller and some are larger, and they have different traits. Like some have red eyes, some have amber eyes, some have eyes that glow, some have legs that are like dog legs, some have legs that are human legs, some have a huge like Schwarzenegger-esque torso, and some have a small dog-like torso. But there are just hundreds of these encounters on there, and there are other podcasts about it too. And some of them you can hear the fear in these people's voices. And some things about this creature are very sinister, let's say. It's not a dumb animal, it's not a mindless thing. It's all the indications are that it seems to get maximum enjoyment the more fear it generates. There are lots of stories that, they're horribly scary. Like it builds up. Like maybe it just starts with a scratching on their window and they wonder what that is. And then it's like literally the dog man like jumping on them and pinning them to the ground. And, it's about to rip them apart. And then it just smiles at them with all of its teeth and gets up and walks back into the forest. It's like, I got you where I want you. I could kill you right now, but I don't have to. I've got all the fear I need. And there's so many stories where it ends with the dog man with a sinister smile and like just creepy as hell. Anyway, took me listening to about like 300 of those before I said, hey, dogmen have hands, not paws. Like it could have totally climbed up to my bedroom window if it was like a smaller dogman. I feel like that makes more sense than distorting my perception, but it's a whole lot of unknowns there. But some of these stories are very compelling. There's a one where there's lots by military people, but very accountable people, where like a guy is charged with driving a military food truck, out to this place where they're having exercises, and he's got hundreds and hundreds of pounds of food in the back. And two dogmen basically take over the truck and destroy it, and he has to take it back to base. And they're like, "What in the hell did you do to our truck?" And he's like, "Werewolves?" And they're like, "No. Like that's not going to cut it, buddy. There's no werewolves here." And then MIBs showed up and or Men in Black, federal people, and they just said like, "Go back to your quarters. We'll take care of it." And then you never really heard anything about it from the superiors again. It was just like everybody shut up about it. That story is particularly amazing, and there are lots of other ones by sheriffs and judges and police officers, and people hear or see something scary in the yard, and they call the police come out, then they see it and they're like, nope, let's get out of here. I'm not going after that, whatever that is. So yeah, that's how I heard about werewolves being a thing. And some people think it's like genetic manipulation and some kind of program to create a super soldier potentially. Other people think it could be related to Nephilim in the Bible, which is fallen angels which came down and interbred with women to create hybrids of humans and whatever. And also there are lots of stories of them getting shot and not being hurt. Like some guys were on a four-wheeler and it was running right beside their four-wheeler and actually grabbed onto the roof part of it, or not a four-wheeler, a side-by-side, grabbed onto the roof part of it and kept running beside them. And the one guy had a shotgun because they were out hunting, and basically blew off the left part of this thing's chest, and it just kept running and got kind of angry. It didn't faze it.
I think what chills me to the bone in this account is that the fact you mentioned there's a sinister element, this freaks me out. When I hear these things, I think, okay, they're just neutral. They don't want anything to do with me. I'm not going to bother them. They're not going to bother me. But when something, pounces up in front of my bedroom window and snarling at me, I mean, that's just...
Hey, I wasn't provoking it. I was laying in bed.
Yeah.
So I planned to go on a solo camping trip this summer to a place in Ontario that actually has had 2 dogman sightings. Because I was going to try and... If I could work up my nerve, I was going to try and stay out in the woods at this location. But the timing ended up not working out because my wife needed me around. But it's about 3 hours from me. It's a little town. It had 2 separate dogman sightings by 2 different people years apart. They were both interviewed on this show. They were scary encounters. One was daytime, one was nighttime. They interviewed them on this podcast, Dogman Encounters Radio, and it was like a group of 3 or 4 kids, like teenagers.
So how would you prepare? So if you had the opportunity at some point to go and do this, like how do you protect yourself? What kind of recording equipment do you have? Like how do you prepare for that experience?
I don't know, man. This is the problem, right? Like so many of the encounters that I hear, or all of them essentially, end with the person being really afraid, and then it just leaves, right?
Yeah.
Or something, they might get scratched or something, but they're alive. But the problem is that you're not going to hear from the people who actually got killed because they're dead. So I'm kind of betting on them not killing people, which is maybe a very stupid bet. It's like if there's something completely unbelievable that you could have a chance of seeing, I would kind of like to, just to, I don't want to get eaten or killed, but like some kind of confirmation that weird stuff is really going on, beyond UFOs, because I think at this point a lot of people have seen UFOs. Aliens, I think, would still freak me out, but definitely seeing a werewolf would freak me out, and nobody would believe me. They might believe me about aliens, but nobody would believe me about a werewolf or a dogman or a Bigfoot for that matter. But yeah, I don't know how I would prepare. Maybe I would get like a silver bladed knife or something, or like the silver bullet thing. But who knows if that stuff works even.
Yeah. Maybe let's transition a little bit into your experience where I think you actually have made it into the woods trying to find Bigfoot. Yeah. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I grew up, on a hobby farm, and I spent essentially all my free time in the woods. I never saw anything strange out there. I just loved being in the woods. And, moving away to go to university and then moving to Toronto and stuff, I completely lost the habit of going in the woods because it wasn't as easy as walking out my back door anymore. But I had always been interested in strange things, as you know, and I kind of made a habit when I was a kid of like, if we're driving somewhere, I was bored, so I would just look out the window, and I would always be looking in the forest to like see if I could see a Bigfoot, right? Even though I didn't really think they were around, but like I didn't have anything else to do anyway, and I still did that to this day. If we're driving like a long distance past a lot of forest, I would just kind of be checking out the forest. Like I hadn't really looked into Bigfoot in a long time. My focus had primarily been on UFOs. In 2017, I was browsing around Netflix and I saw this documentary called Discovering Bigfoot by a guy named Todd Standing. I was like, yeah, why not? Let's check it out. So I hit play, and he is in Alberta, and he goes way deep on logging roads, and then off the logging roads just into the woods in the middle of nowhere. He presented some really compelling full HD video of these Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And I was just like, what the heck? I've never seen video this clear ever. There's that 1967 footage of the Patterson-Gimlin film where this Bigfoot is walking across sort of a rocky wooded area in California, but since then I hadn't seen anything compelling. And I was just blown away, and he went on to say like, oh yeah, they make these they'll make huge wooden teepees out of like sticks and logs, or they'll bend trees over in an arch and stick the end of it in the ground and hold the end down, with some other sticks and things. It was a good movie, like I suggest watching it. But I was just like, okay, this was, to me, really compelling stuff. But I wonder what people who are into Bigfoot on the internet think about it. Like, do they think this guy is a jokester? Do they think, like, this is good stuff? So I decided to Google reviews of the movie. And I found a review by this YouTuber named Utah Sasquatch. He said, yeah, I think this is legit, but you don't have to go to the middle of northern Alberta off a logging road to see these things. He lived in Utah, and he said, I just went into the mountains. So you want to find somewhere with lots of cover, prey animals, and somewhere that has a water supply. Really, that's all you need. And I messaged him, and I was like, so this is all I got to do is like, go find an area that has those things and go look? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So it was like lunchtime, and I was just like, okay. So I got in my car, because I knew there was a park nearby that had all that stuff and wasn't very busy. Like, nobody went there really. It's a conservation zone. So I went there. He basically said, go there to an area that has that stuff and just go off trail and you'll start finding this stuff. So I drove literally 5 minutes from my house, which isn't where I live now, and I parked my car. I walked down the trail and I got about halfway down the trail and I just turned left and went into the woods. 10 feet into the woods, there's like a big log suspended between two trees. It's like this tree has a Y in it and this tree has a Y in it, and there's a big log has been wedged in there with its roots at one side and, you know, the rest of the tree going across.
Wow.
So somehow the roots of this tree got pulled out, or the tree got pulled out by its roots and put up. I was just like, oh, whatever. Like, probably the tree fell over and just leverage or whatever, it lifted the roots up. And so I kept going. And then I found like a tree that's kind of fallen over. It's kind of at a 45-degree angle still. I found a spot where there was all these sticks leaning against that angled tree, as if to create like a lean-to shelter. So one side of it's open, the other side is sheltered by all these leaning sticks. And I keep going, I find a teepee that's like made out of sticks. It's not enough to shelter you from the weather, but it's like definitely a thing that has been built by putting all these sticks around in like a cone shape, and it has an entrance. I just kept finding this stuff, and I was like, what in the world? This is the first time I've ever looked. What are the odds he would tell me to look for this, and I would go and look for this and find it? So I was like, okay, I'm going somewhere else. I went to Google Maps, same day, right? I'm like, so I find this other forest that's nearby. I drive there, get out of my car, go in, literally same thing. I was instantly totally hooked with like, what in the world is going on? And I went to maybe 9 or 10 different places around London. 9 of them, I found that stuff, like without even hardly having to look. And some people are like, oh yeah, Boy Scouts, whatever, it's gotta be Boy Scouts. And I'm like, do you think humans would make something that's like a little bit waterproof? Windproof even? Like, these are very wind-friendly structures, right? It's not, you're not blocking anything. You might stop someone from seeing you, but it's not blocking weather. And also, I kept finding them. Like, at this point now, current day, I have about 1,200 photos and videos of these things from all around London, but also we have a family cottage by Ipperwash Beach, and all around there I found more. As soon as I looked there, I found them. And it's like, there doesn't appear to be any limit to this stuff. And then I found people online who are also documenting these structures, and I talked to them. And this one lady is like a teacher, and she finds them all over the place, and she videos them and puts them up on her YouTube channel. She finds even more incredible stuff happens because she checks on them so often. She has shown humongous structures made out of thousands of pieces of wood and sticks. And she'll go back the next day sometimes, and it'll be moved 50 feet over the other way. What Boy Scout is going to do that? There's no purpose to moving it 50 feet. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe if you had no job and no society to participate in, and you lived in the woods, like, yeah, maybe it's a little bit prettier 50 feet that way, or there's a better energy alignment or something. Like, who knows? But nobody's going to spend the hours and hours and hours and hours that takes and do it in a single night to move it. Like, or in my own case, I had this area that had like 5 or 6 of these structures, and I went back this past summer and they're all just gone. And I was like, what? They've been here for like since 2017. They've been evolving and slowly changing, whatever, but since 2017, they're all gone. Then I went back as soon as I could. I needed more time, and I thought, I'll explore the rest of this forest. There was an area of the forest that was like too thick for me to get through, and I thought maybe I'll walk around to the other side of the forest and come in from the other side. And I went in there, and like, I don't know, I'm 50 feet down the trail and I see a structure over there. So I go check it, and from that one I can see another one. From that one I can see another one. And there's like 5 or 6 in there. Like, ones I either didn't know about or that had just been built. But they're different kinds of structures, and they're built in a different way. And it was just like, what? It's like they just moved this little family village to a different part of the forest. That's me finding some evidence. And I have some what I think is interaction I can talk about after, but you definitely have a question hanging.
Yeah, what really surprises me is the hit rate, because, you know, when people put you on these quote unquote wild goose chase. I'm looking for something that I don't think I'm going to get any evidence of. You had tremendous success, with evidence, like 9 out of 9 times. Like, what the heck's going on? It wasn't even difficult.
That's it. That's it.
But I have to say, like, this is perfect my interest. I said, okay, these things are there. They're moving. You guys have hundreds of photos and videos yourself, let alone the community and so on.
Yeah.
What about like setting some 24-hour, video capture to see what's actually going on, who's moving them, who's building them, or has the community, investigated it that way? Because I'm like, it's clearly there and it's in many places. Let's get to the bottom of this.
They have tried everything you can possibly think of. Like sometimes they can get them on a thermal camera. If they're out, at night, actively trying to check out, trying to find Bigfoot. Occasionally they'll get lucky with a little bit of thermal footage. One problem is the thermal cameras tend to have very low resolution, like 240 by 160 pixels for ones that are, mostly affordable. So everything is very fuzzy. Trail cameras are not very expensive. They work in the dark. They work using infrared light. So the way they can see in the night is by shooting out infrared light and using an infrared filter on the lens, I think, is how it works. But that means it's projecting out a type of light humans can't see. But the working theory is that Sasquatch can see infrared light because they avoid these things like the plague. It's like nobody catches anything on the trail cams, but also their trail cams will be disabled or removed, and there's no photos of who moved it. One person had them out. They think Sasquatch banging on their house and stuff, and they were just really getting sick of it. So they surrounded their house in these trail cameras. They didn't know they had a blind spot or two. What happened was wherever the infrared light couldn't reach anymore, there were sticks on the ground at the edge of their yard. And it was like somebody or something went there and said, yep, as long as you're behind this stick, you're safe. They can't see you. And lots of people have, they'll put a trail camera out and they'll find it just sitting on the ground with its lens, on the ground, and they go watch the footage, and something comes from behind the tree that the trail camera's on and takes it off and puts it on the ground, lands down, and then they take the food or the bait or whatever the people had left out. Also, people will leave out presents. Sometimes it's called the process called gifting because they'll want to have some kind of interaction. They start leaving out apples, and they'll come back and the apples will be gone. So then they put up a trail camera focused on the apples. And they'll come back and their trail camera will be down and the apples will be gone. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to put a jar of peanut butter out there. They don't get any footage, but when they look at the jar of peanut butter, the lid is still on it, but they unscrew the lid and there's scoops taken out of the peanut butter, but then they put the lid back on. Maybe raccoons could get into your peanut butter and eat the peanut butter, but they're not putting the lid back on. That doesn't make any sense. And you need thumbs to be able to put a lid back on in the first place. So there's lots of things that people have tried that is, you'd think they would be able to get it. One researcher named Christopher Noel, I believe he's in Vermont, and he's got a place near where he lives where he does some interaction with them. And there's one that's always kind of hitting on wood with sticks or something, and he calls the Sasquatch drummer. He took a fiber optic camera and sort of embedded it in a log and then buried the cable 100 or 200 feet over to a digital recorder that he buried in the ground. The recorder is far from where the camera is. The camera has got moss and stuff around it. It's embedded in an old log, and he's just trying to get footage of this thing. And from the day he did that, the whole forest went dead for he never heard drummer anymore. He never got, sometimes Sasquatch will throw things at you or near you, little acorns or pine cones or whatever. Just if you're sitting around a fire, you'll get these incoming things, and all indications are that they're interested in people. They're just afraid of them. But anyway, he didn't get anything thrown at him. Just no interaction at all from that day. And I think it was about a year or 18 months later, he was like, well, that experiment didn't work. So he went and took apart the camera, took the recorder out, kind of said, okay, sorry, I get the message. You don't want this camera here. I got it. And he took it back. And I think it was the next time he went out, he got the sounds again. He got the stick clicking on the wood, or banging on the wood. He got little pine cones and stuff thrown again. It was like, they're back right away. And he was just like, okay, message received, right? And since I mentioned this part about acorns and things, well, I had someone tell me that they're very curious about humans and they want to check you out, but they're afraid to. So if you want to see them, what you got to do is put all the odds in their favor and not in yours, which also sounds like a very bad idea. So he's like, go out when there's a new moon, which means there's no moon in the sky, there's no moonlight. Ideally, there would be clouds, so there's also no starlight. Go to an area where you found these structures and stuff, but go in a clearing. So you can kind of be in the middle of this clearing, and they can be in the forest for cover. They have much better night vision than we do, so they'll be able to see you unobscured by anything, and you won't be able to see them because they'll be covered by trees. But you might get little things thrown at you. You might hear them. They have very distinct sounds. You might get some interaction that way. Just sit there and hang out. You don't have to go looking for them at all. Just sit there and hang out. They know you're there. I was like, okay, so I thought I'll go back to the first place where I ever found these things. There was a clearing there, and there's a pond behind the clearing and actually a creek in front of the clearing. So they would be on the other side of this little creek in the forest, and I'd be sitting in this clearing area. And so I went there at 2:30 in the morning on a new moon with cloud cover. It was black out. Like, I couldn't see a thing. After a while, like, I walked up and down the trail and I ended up in the middle. I came back to the middle. I waited a bit. It was only maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And I started hearing these really loud, heavy footsteps. Then I started hearing some branches breaking, like loud snaps. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little bit freaked out here. And then I heard something whiz by my head and splash in the pond right behind me. You know the sound a rock makes when you throw it in water? Mm-hmm. It's ploosh or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then another one. And they're coming within about 2 feet of my head. And I'm guessing they're about softball size based on the splash they made. So I got 5 of these big rocks whiz past my head from probably 150 feet away across this clearing, across the creek in the woods. Oh, it was 0 degrees outside. So it was 2:30 in the morning, pitch black, 0 degrees, very cold. So it threw that stuff at me, and then the footsteps started moving again, and it was going towards where my car was parked. I lost my complete nerve at that point. I was like, I am out of here so fast, it's not even funny. And so I ran, and before it could get to my car, I got in my car and took off. And I was like, damn it, why did I leave? I was trying to see this thing, but I just got so viscerally afraid it was ridiculous. Then I bought a thermal headset, which was like $3,000, $3,500. And I went out there again, and I was looking, and I saw an animal or something by the water, and I was watching it for a while. I couldn't tell what it was, but it was small. And it was late at night again. It was around the same time, on a new moon. And then I got 2 or 3 more of those big rocks lobbed very close to me. I got scared again, and I was using the thermals, and I couldn't see anything in the forest. Like, I couldn't see any heat signatures. So I don't know what was throwing them or where from, but I just was like, I got to get out of here. And then about a month later, I went back on the next new moon and just apologized for using the thermals. I was like, hey, sorry about that. I just got this feeling like people had told me, I think, that you're being disrespectful by trying to see them or capture them on film or whatever. And I was like, you know what, that sounds right to me. They're just chilling in their space. So I won't do that anymore. I won't try to capture them anymore. After I said sorry, I didn't have anything else thrown at me, and I still haven't. So that was 4 years ago. I don't get anything thrown at me. Now, sometimes when I go into the forest, there will be arrangements of sticks on the ground that are arranged in a certain way. A couple weeks ago when I went to the forest, I'm just walking on a path, and I go off the path into the forest, and just this random spot in the forest, there's a golden ratio nautilus, spiral, made out of sticks on the floor of the forest, not on the trail. Somebody's taken tons of little sticks and made this nice nautilus design. Yeah, and these structures are always coming and going and disappearing and moving, and big ones, little ones. I have lots of pictures of my kids playing in them. So it's just really intriguing. And then I became an admin of a Facebook group called Bigfoot Canada, where we have like over 20,000 members now, people telling their sightings and asking for more information. And I've met people through that who have had various interactions with Sasquatch, some of them up close. And there's also, I mean, this is a whole other can of worms, which I won't fully go into, but I'll say there's 2 or 3 camps in the Bigfoot community. One says they're like an undiscovered ape, basically. One says they may be aliens or fallen angels. People have seen them at the same time as seeing UFOs. And then there's other people who say they're interdimensional, because there are lots of witnesses who have seen them appear out of nothing or disappear into nothing. Or there's a good video of this actually, where one is peeking out from behind a tree, like looking at this person, and the person sees them and like is taking a video of this black silhouette peeking out from behind a tree. But the silhouette is humongous, and this tree is about 4 inches wide. And so he starts getting closer, videoing, and it just goes behind the tree, and it's the whole thing is gone. You're just like, you can't hide something that big behind a 4-inch diameter tree. There are many cases where there's photos of this and video of this where, they'll be following a set of footprints that just look like very large human barefoot footprints. And they'll just end like in the middle of a field. Like, why aren't there more footprints here? It's the rest of the field is just as muddy as this part, but the footprints just stop. Or they'll be walking along and they'll just see a trail of them start in the middle of nowhere. And so that is, people think maybe that's them just popping into this dimension, or it could be like a UFO dropping them off or picking them up. But they go somewhere, and there aren't any trees or things for them to jump into. And I'm feeling I'm in crazy talk land now, but this is just after I've been looking into it since 2017, and things keep getting more and more interesting.
Yeah, I'm actually admiring your adventurous spirit as I listen to you. Even if you've kind of chickened out and had to go back again, I can hear your passionate curiosity for this, and I love how adventurous you are.
If you like what you heard today, consider recording your own AudioLife private podcast or giving one to a loved one for a unique and memorable gift. Today, AudioLife listeners will receive 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. Also, remember to rate our show and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.